Hello, this is teddygaming, and welcome back to another very special video, because in today's one we can be interviewing Sarah Myer. Now you might know them from doing the colours on the Saturday Morning Adventures Continues, as well as the Saturday Morning Adventures comics, but you might also know them from doing the covers for a few of the tmnt comics. So yeah.
Sure. Hi, I'm Sarah Myer. I'm the colorist on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Saturday Morning Adventures from IDW Publishing. And I've also done a variant cover for that series. And then currently I'm working on variant covers for the TMNT and Usagi Yojimbo crossover series Where When.
Okay, so the first question is, did you watch the previous versions of the Turtles?
Yes, definitely. So I'm an 80s kid, and some of my earliest memories are literally watching the 1987 Turtles cartoon. That was a big part of my elementary school years. And that was for me, that was like the penultimate version that I just, grew up with. Um, and then as I got older, I learned more about the that there were original comics, but I was way too young at the time to have in high school. I a cartoon from Four Kids Entertainment. And I enjoyed that, though I've revisited that more as an adult actually, and I really appreciate that version as well. And of course the live action trio of films from the 90s, which I loved.
Um, how did you find out about the project?
Well, I was actually so the Saturday Morning Adventures project.
Yes.
Yeah, so I was working on my graphic memoir with First Second, and one of my editors there actually uh sent my work, my Turtles fan art work at the time, over to the editorial team who was working on it and recruiting for that at IDW. So it was actually through one of my editors from another publisher, who I guess he probably just said, "Hey, if you're looking for somebody who really likes turtles and will have some availability once they finish this project, here's somebody that you might want to look at." So I really am thankful to my editor, Michael from First Second, for putting me in contact with Charles and Nick and the team at IDW.
So with the colors, was you told to use certain colors for the comics, or was you able to use your own colors?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. So the main thing, of course, that was important was to make sure that everybody's the characters were all colored with their base colors, so to speak, being on brand. So, making sure, for example, that there's a very specific sort of green. I mean, this shirt actually doesn't technically have the right colors for Bebop and Rocksteady's clothes in some areas. But the branding for Turtles has to be, there's a specific kind of green, there's a specific, their the bellies of their shells or whatever you might call it is supposed to be a specific kind of yellow. So making sure that those colors were correct was really important. But in terms of shading and the colors of the shadows present in certain environments, they gave me a lot of creative freedom with that. Um, I mean, obviously, I tried to do my best to think about settings that had already been established in the cartoon. For example, the Technodrome, the interior of that coloring, I knew that, well, these shadows are going to be very cool in tone, there's probably going to be a bit of an alien kind of greenish sea green glow because of how the monitors often looked in the show and things like that. But generally, they as long as the characters were on model in terms of the colors that I picked for them, other than that, I was pretty much allowed to uh, generally pick a lighting scheme, whatever I thought best suited the story or the environment.
Because there was a few new locations and characters in the series, and was you able to come up with those characters, or was you told to use certain colors for the characters or locations?
Oh, like some of the characters that are new for that specific comic.
Yes.
Yeah, there was like a handful, like for example, Strum, rock soldier. He was, from like a pre-established sort of species or type of character group, but he was, a new character for that. Um that In cases like that, I really just followed the main line artist's lead, Tim Lottie, for what he had done on the covers. For example, I actually was given his cover art first, and I'd seen that for the second issue already before I even started coloring his inks. So for that character, I literally just used a color dropper to make sure that I had the base colors correct, and to make sure that I got all of his clothing correct as was established by Tim's cover art. And some other things where I was given reference just in case there was a very specific thing, like this character must have this color shirt, etc.
Could you color all the characters? Did you have a favorite character to color?
Oh, a favorite character to color would have to be I the turtles, honestly, but there were there were a few scenes in Saturday Morning Adventures issue number 1 that featured Michelangelo. I don't know if you've had a chance to read through that first issue where they're in the VR game or the VR world. And Michelangelo has, he's kind of facing off against all these virtual bad guys by himself. He was really fun to color because he was just moving throughout this like epic landscape full of bad guys going after him. And I had fun with the lighting. So I would say between Michelangelo's antics, his facial expressions, and just like the fun of thinking I've got to make sure that these colors sort of indicate a sense of danger. I had some red lighting so that we get a sense of like this virtual world sun going down in a way as Michelangelo's running through. That was really fun. But I also love just coloring the turtles when they're having conversation with each other. Um, and I always just I get kind of starstruck when I think about I'm coloring April O'Neil's hair, things like that. Or because it's there's deadlines and you got to get it done, and it's work is work, but at the same time, because I'm such a fan of this, it really there were moments when I would just feel kind of giddy, like I get to shade Shredder's armor. It was just really fun.
Okay, was there a favorite? Was there a favorite issue? You was able to color.
Um, I think the first one had the most was the most fun in terms of all the different, environments and enemies that showed up. Um, I well, this isn't really that great an answer, but I liked them all. But but and then, for the second issue, I enjoyed doing the concert scenes because that's immediately different lighting, Central Park at night. But, trying to keep in mind this takes place roughly in the late 80s, early 90s, it takes place within the show. Or we're trying to, make it look like it does. So I'm thinking everybody's, the turtles, I gave them like really neon rainbow colored like tracksuits almost, and that was fun with the darker lighting, but the spotlight's kind of going over the crowd while they're trying to find Strum. The third issue was really fun because that one's called Super Casey with the electrical powers that Casey gets. That was fun because I got to make Casey in some cases look like Super Saiyan, like Dragon Ball Z type lighting coming out of his skin. And so and then the fourth issue, of course, is like a Fantastic Voyage thing, and that was a lot of red, but I was thinking, okay, I've got to it was fun in that it was challenging because I had to think, well, technically this is taking place inside a body, so it would be really dark, but how can I make these blood vessels look like we're drawing the reader's eye to the right part of the panel, making sure that the headlights of the van are pointing in a certain way that might showcase the action. So they were all fun in their own way, but I really think I enjoyed coloring the first issue the most, probably.
Um, so, so, and do you have any? Was there any difficult parts to draw? No, difficult parts to color in the series.
Um, I guess I guess if I had to pick something that was most difficult, it would just be just me personally, I find coloring buildings really boring. That's just me. But at the same time, they don't really need to stand out unless it's like, TCRI or something like that. Um, uh, Not really. And I gotta say, like, I'm really glad that I appreciated so much how clean the line art was, so that definitely makes a colorist's job very easy, when the lines are very clean and it's very clear when you can, tell what shapes are to be separated out from a background color palette. Um, yeah, I would say probably just buildings is my personal least favorite thing to color.
So was it quite hard to, and to shade in the way, like in like the cartoon style?
Well, yeah, like cell shading style, where you have a very a hard line to the shadows and making sure that the highlights are generally just, one or two sort of lines. Um that can be challenging in its own way because there's really, there's not a lot of room for error. Like I had to double and triple check sometimes when I would finish with the page, just looking over it and thinking, okay, I hope that I got all of the layers that I put down, that there's no stray little marks. Sometimes, obviously with a deadline, you got to do your best and get it done on time, but so that was challenging with cell shading. I personally find that a little bit um it's less forgiving of like small little stray marks in my shading than say, a painterly, more smoothed out or blended style. But yeah, I think um I oh, and making sure too, I guess like I did kind of add a little bit of my own take on the shading style too. Um that it didn't necessarily follow exactly how the hand painted cells looked. So I had fun embellishing a bit. I added maybe perhaps a little bit more rendering on the muscles and such than they would have been able to with their time constraints and budget for the show back then. But yeah. I guess cell painting itself is kind of the challenging thing, whether it be digital now or even back then.
So because you started drawing some of the covers, what's it like to start drawing the covers for these comics?
What was it like? Um, it was really surreal. It happened really fast, honestly. Like I had done the variant cover C for the third issue back in July of 2022, and then I think it was the end of August that I got the email saying, "Hey, how would you like to color the interiors for the short, the mini series run?" And I, of course, said yes right away. But that was really fast. And then right after that, it was like I got the pages and it was right to work, which is probably a good thing because I think otherwise I might have freaked myself out thinking, "Oh my God, it's turtles! It's a dream job!" So in a way, it was a good thing that it happened so quickly. But yeah, it was great. It was just a total dream come true, the whole thing.
So because of that, did you become like an artist first or colorist first?
I actually, okay, so this was actually my first gig being a colorist. I had been an artist who, often would just like I was just used to prior to this coloring my own work and my own line art. So this was my first time coloring somebody else's work. Um, and it was, I mean, that was really fun. It was cool to kind of, I guess, experience working on another side of the production, and working in a team. Um, but yeah, prior to this, I had done a graphic novel for a second and had been working on a second graphic novel for them. And then, just been doing commissions and freelance work throughout my teen into early adult years at Artist Alley and such. So, but yeah, this was my first job as a colorist.
So with the variant covers, I told you and draw the covers in a certain way.
Oh, I guess, well, IDW gave me a lot of freedom for that third Turtles cover. I actually oftentimes they'll give us kind of a rundown of the plot or a general idea. Like of course with Usagi Yojimbo and the crossover coming out, with that, I knew what each issue entails, what the story's about, and that gave me an idea. But for that first 80s Turtles cover that I did, I actually didn't have the plot for the issue, hence why there's no Casey on the cover. So I just sort of thought, okay, I'll make this. I also at the time assumed that it might be the first and the last Turtles thing that I ever would get to do. So I went really hard on just trying to put every aspect of the 80s show that I could think of, including, I guess a little bit more of an obscure sort of thing, which is the Channel 6 news van that they're driving rather than the turtle van. So yeah, it was pretty open though. They basically, the prompt that they gave me was, we're doing a series for the 80s Turtle show, and it's set in that universe. So we're looking for a design that, utilizes all those elements from that show. Think pizza, skateboards, nostalgia. I was like, all right, let's go.
So because with your with that cover and the colors and that was you told to use like specific colors and for that cover, or was you able to do, or was you able to use your own colors for that
Oh,
issue?
yeah. So for that cover, I would say, well, I actually didn't get any edits on that cover. I kind of just picked the colors based on what I considered the quintessential 80s turtle look, Though I will admit I did go back and forth when I was putting in the colors. I was like, should I do the Playmates thing where like Mikey has the kind of seafoam green skin, which is reflected in the 2003 show? Because technically the Playmates line from the 80s was based on the cartoon, but then I thought, no, they probably, since they said it's in universe, I thought, okay, they probably want the same color green for each of the turtles. So just like little things like that, I kind of waffled on. But they generally, I think unless something looks super off model, like if I had, for example, made April have blonde hair or something, or given Irma like blonde hair, I think that definitely they would have made sure, they would have gotten notes from Nickelodeon and said make sure that these characters have this color hair and given a reference. But that was actually a pretty quick process. Once I submitted my colors for my line art and that cover, they were like, cool, good job, looks good. And I was like, wow. So
Um, so with the so with that so with your cover and was you able to draw in your own art style, or did it draw in that type of art style?
um I was definitely trying to capture the 80s style as much as possible, but I think that I tend to, and they were very open to this. I get the feeling that they were thinking, however the artist draws it, as long as it doesn't look super like I can't even tell that this is a turtle, like I think that they were pretty open to little variations. And I tend to like, just if left to my own devices, if I'm not told this has to look like a screenshot, I tend to draw like a hybrid kind of thing of somewhere between the 80s Turtles and 2003. So like Raph looks a little bit more muscular and a little bit more aggressive perhaps in that cover. Even though it is 87 Raph, he kind of channels a little bit more of 2003 Raph, things like that. But they generally let me kind of just draw my personal take on the 87 Turtles for that.
So with the Isagi covers, was you able to draw in your own art style for that one, or is that one you had to stick in to like an art style for that?
Oh, for Usagi?
Yes.
Yeah. So that I was trying really, really hard to do sort of a little bit of my style, but kind of tailored more towards I wanted to make it clear, okay, these are not the 87 turtles. These are kind of more of an IDW turtles, with the and I guess, going back to how they are in, I guess, all iterations except for the 90s and the 90s movies and the 87 cartoon, where they have the white eyes instead of the pupil showing. Um, so I tried to make it sort of look more like the IDW turtles in my style. Um, and then for well, I don't know if I can really talk about it yet, but there's a more playful cover that I think has been released on retail catalogs, where they're just eating okonomiyaki, and in that cover, I gave them pupils to make it look a little bit more casual, you know.
So the Saki cross covers. Was you able to was you given like any sort of like references to like draw? Was you able to like draw what you like for that one?
Oh, yeah, I definitely, well, I was given the plot, the script, or not the script yet. And the plot and the uh what materials had been made for the interiors at that time. So, looking at the inks which have the lettering in it, so I was able to more or less read through the whole issues, um, which just as a fan in general was really exciting. But that definitely informs, the cover designs, just picking key, I guess, themes or plot points that I saw in the interior story without giving away too much.
So with the covers, sometimes artists get notes to change things. So the Saki one, would you if you were like given a notes to change things, would you like from like Stan Sakai or was it from Nickelodeon?
Oh, for approval in those?
Yeah.
It has been both. So because it's, Usagi's obviously like Stan's property, and then Nickelodeon owns Turtles, got to make sure that both parties are happy with it. So um yeah, and that's been another kind of starstruck thing for me. It's like just getting like hearing, "Oh, this was approved." I'm like, "Cool." I'm really excited about that. But yeah, so it's been both Stan as well as Nickelodeon.
And what's it been like to work with to all the other people on like these projects?
Um, it's really fun. Everybody that I've worked with, the editorial team, as well as just I haven't talked to Stan Sakai one on one or anything like that, but I receive any feedback through my editors on it. But I've really enjoyed working with everybody who works for IDW. I've met Eric Burnham, the writer of Saturday Morning Adventures, and he's super nice. And, he's really into Star Trek and Godzilla and Ghostbusters. So he's, totally like, we can geek out about a lot of different things as well as turtles. And then um, I can't say what the project is, but I've met another team as well, of, artist and writer team, and they're super cool too. So everybody's just been really, really nice, and they're all just pretty much huge fans of the same stuff. So it's very fun.
So with the covers, you're working on the Saturday Morning Adventures continues. And would that be like a regular thing you're doing covers?
Oh, I I can't actually say anything for now. I'm sorry. Yeah, I can't say anything about that. That, and actually I have to say that cover, I did not know it had been revealed yet. Um, because I happened to just be looking on Instagram, and an Italian Turtles account actually had posted it. And because I actually don't have access to my own designs with the Turtles logo put on the top, that's something that happens after I finish with the artwork. So I was a little surprised. I was like, "Oh, I didn't know it was out," or I didn't know that cover art had been released yet. So technically it's not like been formally announced yet, but it did, that image did go out with retail catalog announcements and such. So sometimes that's a surreal kind of thing. Is I was like browsing, I'm like, "Oh, here's my artwork. I did not post that." So yeah, but so I can't say anything about that series just yet, but I have a feeling they'll probably be making an announcement soon.
And do you think it'd be like, and do you think there could be any sort of possibility you could actually start drawing the actual comics themselves?
Oh, I would love that. I I definitely am interested, and my editors, know that I'm interested in doing that, and that I'm always up for it. I think it's a matter of just finding, when there's, I guess, a slot, um, because as you can imagine, there's so many talented artists who are already like booked and working on this, and then So I guess it's just a matter of, down the line maybe. Um, and I'll be ready for sure when and if that happens.
But is it different to work on the normal variant covers to the 110 variant covers?
Oh, I guess in that I felt like first of all, everybody was super chill, of course, as always, like working on those. But I personally felt a little bit more pressure knowing that it was a 110, retail incentive. I was like, oh man, like, you always want to do your best on the work, obviously, but knowing like, oh, who are the other cover artists on this? Oh, Kevin Eastman and Stan Sakai and David Peterson. Oh, okay. And I was like, and I had a little bit of an imposter syndrome with that. I was like, oh no. Um, so yeah, I put some like a little bit more pressure on myself, I guess, with that. But um, I'm trying to just focus on, how much fun it is to do them. So I would say though, in terms of the way that the publisher prompts those covers, there's really no difference between how they kind of propose, or how they sort of guide us through creating a variant cover versus an A or a B or C cover versus the 1 in 10 retail incentive ones. I guess I hope that retail stores, buy enough copies of the comic and get those in and that people enjoy them. So, yeah.
So the final question is, and do you have a favorite turtle?
So, when I was a kid, I loved Michelangelo and Raphael. The most. I think that a lot of kids from that generation, really just by default kind of feel like Mikey's like their favorite in many ways. I feel like Mikey's sort of quintessentially everybody's favorite, but maybe there's a second other turtle, like from
Yeah.
that generation. But and I really liked Raph, especially because of the 1990 movie Raph. As a kid, really I thought it was really cool that he said "damn" and was like edgy. um, so I liked Mikey and Raph when I was a kid, but as an adult, I really like Donatello more, especially the older I get. I'm like approaching my 40s now, and rewatching the 87 show is like hilarious as an adult in ways that it was amusing and fun when you're a kid, but when you rewatch that show, first of all, there's really a lot more like adult innuendo than I remembered, of course, than anything I picked up on as a kid. There's a lot of like kind of jokes about like New York City apartment rent and things like that, like rent prices. And then Donatello is far more stressed out than as a kid I even picked up on. That went right over my head. And now just watching the 87 cartoon as an adult, I'm like, he's a lot more relatable to me now that, you know, I'm an adult approaching middle age. And what was it like, his kind of being discouraged over his inventions not working, or the others sometimes kind of throw him under the bus, so to speak, a little bit. They're like Donatello, like, and that to me as just an aging millennial is like hilarious and very relatable as an adult. So I'd say now Donatello is my favorite.
Those are all the questions I had. Thank you so much for doing this. This has really meant a lot.
Oh, thank you for having me. And I'm really enjoying your channel. I actually watched your voice actor interviews and watched some of the other artist interviews. So, yeah, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for having me.
Is there anything you'd like to promote?
Um, well, TMNT and Usagi Yojimbo Where When coming out. I believe that comes out starting in April of this year. And then I'd also like to just give kind of a shout out to my graphic memoir Monstrous, a transracial adoption story, which is coming out in June of 2023, June 27th, 2023, from First Second Books. And I'll be at several conventions this year, selling some of my turtles artwork, and hope to see you guys there.